Some stories are not meant to be heard alone. This is one of them. It's the story of a night when a 12-year-old girl was left home by herself, and someone, or something, broke in while she was hiding. The police investigation was never fully released. Key reports were sealed, and what really happened that night still haunts her to this very day. Her older brother, who was supposed to be watching her, had just left with his friends, leaving her all alone for the first time in years. At first, it felt like freedom. A big, empty house. A quiet night. The initial thrill of being by herself, in charge of everything. She decided to watch a horror movie in the den to pass the time, thinking it would be fun. She was wrong. Halfway through the film, the house itself seemed to come alive. The old floorboards creaked upstairs. The wind rattled against the windows. The refrigerator made a sudden clicking sound, and the pipes in the walls groaned. Every single sound seemed amplified, closer than it should be. It was heavy, expectant. The feeling of being watched crept over her skin like a cold draft. She paused the movie, listening intently. Silence. Then came the footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, careful. Not the clumsy, hurried steps of a teenager. These were the steps of someone who didn't want to be heard. One step at a time. The old wooden staircase creaked under a weight that wasn't familiar. It sounded like more than one intruder was methodically moving through her home. Something or someone was inside, and they were coming closer. Her bedroom door was locked, but that felt like a paper-thin defense. It was a small crawl-in closet, filled with old clothes and boxers. Without a second thought, she scrambled out of bed, slid the closet door open, and squeezed herself into the darkest corner, pulling old jackets over her. She held her breath, trying to make herself as small and as silent as possible, her body shaking uncontrollably. Then the footsteps reached the top of the stairs. They paused right outside her bedroom door. She heard a faint metallic jiggle. Drawers were being pulled open. their contents rummaged through and dumped on the floor. Objects were being moved, scraped across surfaces. Then came a heavy, dragging sound, as if a piece of furniture was being pulled across the floor. Each sound was a new wave of terror. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying it was a nightmare, that it was her brother playing a cruel joke, but she knew it wasn't him. Hours passed, or what felt like hours. Listening. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and always trust your instincts. It begins with a quiet suburban house and an unlocked door. The family had just moved in. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, was exploring her new home. It was exciting, a fresh start. But even in a new place, old fears can follow you. She was playing in the living room when she heard it. A small sound, a creak from upstairs. She assumed it was her parents, unpacking boxers, settling in. But a strange feeling washed over her. A feeling that she was being watched. She called out, "Mom, Dad." Silence. She walked to the bottom of the stairs, her heart starting to beat a little faster. Looking up into the darkness of the second floor, she saw nothing, just shadows playing tricks on her eyes. She tried to shrug it off, telling herself it was just the new house making strange noises. But as she turned back to the living room, a floorboard creaked again, this time closer. It wasn't just the house settling, it was a footstep, slow, deliberate. Someone was upstairs. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. The silence that followed was deafening. Every tick of the clock on the wall sounded like a drumbeat, counting down to something terrible. She wanted to run, to scream for her parents, but her feet felt glued to the floor. Who was up there, and what did they want? The fear was paralyzing, a cold hand gripping her heart. Then, a shadow moved at the top of the stairs. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a figure, tall and dark, standing perfectly still, just watching her. She couldn't make out a face, just a silhouette against the dim light from a hallway window. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, a silent predator in her own home. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Was it a burglar, or something worse? The feeling of being prey was overwhelming. This wasn't her house anymore. It was a trap. Finally, her parents' car pulled into the driveway. The sound of the engine broke the spell. The figure at the top of the stairs vanished as quickly as it had appeared, melting back into the shadows. She ran to the door, throwing it open, a wave of relief washing over her as her parents walked in. She tried to explain what she saw, the man on the stairs, the feeling of being watched. They searched the house, top to bottom. They found nothing. No broken windows, no unlocked doors. They told her it was just her imagination, the stress of moving. But she knew what she saw. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every shadow, every creak of the house, was him. The man on the stairs. He was gone, but the terror he left behind was just beginning. Years passed. The memory of the man on the stairs faded, but it never completely disappeared. It became a story, she told herself, a nightmare from her childhood. She was older now, a teenager. Her family had lived in the same house for years. It was familiar, safe, or so she thought. One afternoon, her parents and grandparents went out, leaving her home alone for just a few hours. It wasn't unusual. She was old enough to look after herself. She was watching TV in the living room when the doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole and saw a familiar face. It was their neighbor, a man who had lived across the street for as long as she could remember. He was always friendly, always waving when he drove by. He was a known face, a trusted part of the neighborhood. She opened the door without a second thought. He smiled, said he just wanted to borrow a tool. He seemed normal at first, but as he stepped inside, she noticed something was off. His eyes were wide, darting around the room, not quite focusing on her. His voice was slurred, his words thick and clumsy. He took a few steps into the living room, and the friendly demeanor he'd worn at the door vanished. The smile was gone, replaced by a cold, predatory look. A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't the friendly neighbor she knew. This was a stranger wearing his face. Before she could process what was happening, before she could even ask him to leave, he moved. In one swift motion, he pulled a knife from his jacket. The blade glinted under the living room light. He grabbed her arm, his grip like iron, and pressed the cold steel against her side. "Don't scream," he whispered, his breath hot and foul. He laughed, a low guttural sound that made her blood run cold. He started talking, his words a jumbled mess of threats and nonsensical ramblings. He pushed her through the house, the knife never leaving her side. He was in control. The house, her safe space, felt alien and vast. Every corner held a new terror. The minutes stretched into an eternity, each second a lifetime of fear. She was frozen, unable to think, unable to move. She was alone, or so she thought. Just as the last sliver of hope began to fade, she heard a car pull into the driveway. It was her grandparents, returning early. The sound of the key in the lock was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. The neighbor heard it too. Panic flashed in his eyes. He shoved her hard, sending her sprawling to the floor, and turned to face the door as it opened. Her grandfather walked in, saw the scene, and didn't hesitate. A struggle erupted. Her grandfather, fueled by adrenaline and the need to protect his family, fought with a strength she had never seen. He managed to overpower the neighbor, wrestling the knife away and forcing him out of the house. The neighbor stumbled away into the night, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. The police were called. Statements were made. The feeling of being safe, especially when home alone, was a luxury she could no longer afford. Even trusted friends became potential threats in her mind. A friend staying over for the night, sleeping in the next room, could trigger the same old fear. What if they weren't who she thought they were? What if danger was inside the house with her again? She developed a routine, a series of rituals to keep the fear at bay, locking every door, double-checking every window. She would barricade her bedroom door at night, pushing furniture against it, creating a fortress against the phantoms of her past. She learned to guard herself constantly, to be hyper-aware of her surroundings, because she knew something that most people only see in movies. Danger isn't always a stranger in a dark alley. It can be someone you know, someone you trust, someone who smiles at you every day, just waiting for the perfect moment when you are vulnerable, when you are alone. Even decades later, the memories are as vivid as if they happened yesterday. The memory of the footstep on the stairs, the shadow in the hallway, the cold steel of the knife against her skin, the wild look in her neighbor's eyes. These are the ghosts that haunt her. The memory of someone being in her room, of the violation of her safest space, still follows her. And that the monsters are sometimes the people we know best. What happened to the neighbor? The official reports were sealed. Some investigations were never fully released to the public. He disappeared, and the full story of that night was buried in police files. And they might be closer than you think. So if you're home alone tonight, listening to the silence of your house, thanks for joining us. If this story left you with a chill, be sure to subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story we tell gives you a new nightmare. Stay safe, and always check your locks.